Have you seen other players with fields full of rainbow flowers and you don't know how they did it? Look no further. I am going to teach you everything you need to know about getting all types of flowers, colors, and patterns. All of the mechanics behind the flowers in Hello Kitty Island Adventure can be surprisingly intricate, but I am going to break everything down for you to make it as easy as possible to become a master gardener. This video is going to be a complete guide for both new players and well-seasoned players. That's why I encourage you to take a peek at the table of contents in the description if you're only looking for a specific topic about gardening. Let's get into exploring everything you need to know. On to the basics. How do you begin your gardening journey? First, you will need to meet Wish Me Mel. This can be unlocked pretty early into the game, so if you are a newer player, do not worry. To get to Wish Me Mel, you will need to have completed the Revive the Oasis quests, and then it should unlock one called Curious Caverns. With this quest, you will uncover the Merry Meadow, Wish Me Mel, and all of her friends. All you have to do from here is start leveling up your friendship with her to slowly unlock all of the tools needed to garden. And make sure to make cabins in the Merry Meadow for all of her visitor friends, since having them as a 5-star permanently moved in resident will be necessary to unlock the flowers in all of the biomes. If you need help with their cabins, check out my other videos on their specific visitor requirements. Now you have unlocked the Merry Meadow and you're ready to start your flower journey. Now how do you even grow a flower? Well, you've got a couple of options. You can start by planting wild seeds. They are found on the ground of the Merry Meadow and are the easiest option to get you started. Once you find a few of these seeds, go to these circles on the ground, which are the plots where we can plant the seeds. When you walk up to the plots, you will be able to interact with them. Here, you can plant those plain seeds into each plot. Make sure to water your seeds after you plant them. And for these first seeds you plant in the Merry Meadow, you will only get one type of the 4 default flowers as your island's wildflower. In the Merry Meadow, the default flowers include the Tulia, Penstemum, Bellbutton, or Dandelily, so one of those will be your island's wildflower. You can easily obtain the other 3 Merry Meadow flower seeds through mystery seed capsules. These capsules contain seed packets with any of the meadow flowers in any of their default colors. You get the mystery seed capsules from leveling up your friendship with Wish Me Mel or as a prize from the Crane Craze minigame. The Crane Craze minigame becomes available once you finish the quests that unlock when you reach level 12 with Wish Me Mel, and after you keep expanding the Merry Meadows. I've got a full guide on how to expand the entire Merry Meadow if you need help with that as well. Back to the default flowers. If you are missing some of the default colors or one of the types of the 4 meadow flowers, just keep opening up the mystery seed capsules to get more. And what did I mean by default colors? Well, at first, each flower comes in a limited range of colors, straight from the wild seeds or seed packets. These are called the default colors. For example, my wildflower is Tulia, so when I plant these wild seeds, I know that I will only grow Tulia and that it will either be red, yellow, or violet. But here's where the magic happens. By crossbreeding different colored flowers, you can unlock a whole spectrum of new shades. It's like mixing paints on a canvas, but with petals instead. I'll get into all of that later, because first I want to talk about all of the tools that will help you on your gardening journey. Helpful tools: the Seed Dispenser and Composter. Here we have the Seed Dispenser and Composter. The Seed Dispenser is unlocked at Friendship level 6 with Wish Me Mel through the Green Thumbs quest. It essentially clones your plucked flowers back into seed packets for you to plant. In the Seed Dispenser, you can only put solid plucked flowers into it. You cannot put in pattern flowers or limited time event flowers. For example, if I put a plucked red Tulia into the Seed Dispenser, I will get a seed packet for a red Tulia. And the Composter is obtained through the Mulch Be Well quest at Friendship level 8 with Wish Me Mel. The Composter is what gives you Fertilizer. For the Composter, you can compost any plucked flowers, including patterned flowers, event flowers, seedlings, seed packets, and wild seeds. But keep in mind, these things basically disappear when you put them in the Composter. So if you put 5 things into the Composter, you will get 5 fertilizers back. Fertilizer is incredibly useful. It enhances crossbreeding chances, promotes seed production, and can transform any flower into a rare flower with a unique pattern. Overall, it just generally increases the chances of something happening with your flowers. Next up, we've got the Trowel. It is unlocked at Friendship level 10 with Wish Me Mill through the Dig It Up quest. The trowel is a handy tool for rearranging your garden or composting excess flowers. Here are the 5 different stages of growth, and depending on which stage your flower is in, you will get something different when you trowel them. So, the first stage is a seed. This stage looks like a small brown pile of dirt with the seed visible in the center. Remember to water these every day to help them grow. Watering helps flowers grow faster, and when you trowel seeds up, you get seed packets in your inventory. Next comes the sprout stage. It's still small, and if you use the trowel to dig it up, it will also return to a seed packet in your inventory. Once your plant reaches the grown stage, you'll start to see the progress. At this point and beyond, you can use the trowel to dig it up and get a seedling that can be replanted. Now, onto the bud stage. This is where you'll begin to see colors emerging. This also becomes a seedling when troweled. A bloomed flower. This is when your flower is ready to be plucked. After plucking, it should return to the grown stage, so remember to try to water it again to help speed up the growth process. When you trowel it up, you will get a seedling and the plucked bloom that you can put in a planter, compost, or even use at the creation station. So you'll be getting the 2 separate items. And another pro tip about using the trowel. So it can be super useful for checking if a new sprout will be a crossbreed color or not, since it says the color of the flower when you trowel it up at any growth stage. So if you are trying to mix colors or get patterns, digging up new sprouts can be a useful way to check without waiting until they become fully bloomed. Why do you have to water your plants? Well, watering your plants speeds up the growth process. If you leave your flowers without any care, they'll still grow, just much slower. So don't forget to water them every day, because you can take the growth process from 6 days all the way to 3 days. But it definitely seems like a big deal to water all of your flowers, right? But fear not, you are not alone in your watering efforts. Once you complete the Friends of the Flowers quest, you can call upon a helpful Null to wear the sprinkler hat. When you give a Null a hat, he will be able to water all of the plots in one biome, and he will continue to water once per day afterwards. You just have to ask every single day. So, for example, if I ask a Null wearing the sprinkler hat at the Meadow to water all of the flowers for me, the Null will only water flowers in the Meadow. They will not water flowers in any other biome. So you'll need to give one of these hats to a Null in each biome if you plan on using this feature. But be careful, they won't water the flowers that have bloomed at the reset, so you may have to go back and water them yourself if the first thing you do in the day is ask the Null to water everything. Players can also don the sprinkler hat and water a whole patch of flowers at once. When you go to water one flower in the patch, it will water everything, so you do not need to hand water each flower one by one. But unlike the Null, you don't do all of the ones in the biome, you just do the individual patch at a time. And let's not forget about Rainfall. After completing the A Clue on the Shore quest series to restore the Aquafaller, when there's rainfall in a biome, that also waters flowers, giving you a natural boost in your gardening endeavors. But if it rains, you won't be able to ask a Null to water the region for you. It will show up as if you've already asked them that specific day. Now, we need to talk about one of the most fun but complicated parts about gardening: mixing colors. This first part will only be talking about mixing colors of the same type or species. I'm going to use the term species and type interchangeably, and later on I will talk about crossbreeding between different species. I strongly suggest that you familiarize yourself with the master palette. The aim of the master palette is to ensure consistency and simplify color mixing for all of the players. The colors on the palette match up with the names of the colors of the flower in the game. And although there are white flowers in the game, and on the master palette they have black and gray, they do not plan to actually have black and gray flowers. At least that's what's up at the time I'm making this video, which is a little before 1.8. And if you look at the master palette, there are 2 rows of colors. The top row are referred to as the base colors, and the bottom row are the tint colors. The only way to get the tint colors is through mixing the base color with white. So, for example, red mixed with white will give you warm pink. And now, let's take a look at all of the color mixes you can do with the same type of flower. So to get orange, you will need to mix yellow and red. To get coral, you will need to mix red and orange. To get green, you need to mix yellow and blue. To get lime, you need to mix yellow and green. To get teal, you need to mix green and sky. To get violet, you need to mix red and blue. To get indigo, you need to mix blue and violet. To get magenta, you need to mix violet and hot pink. However, there are some colors that you can't mix directly. If you're aiming for those colors and they're not among the default flower colors, you'll need to transfer colors from one flower type to another using a patterned flower. But more on that in a bit. These unmixable colors do include red, yellow, sky, blue, hot pink, and white. So these ones, you'll all have to do some cross-type breeding, which I will talk about soon. But also something super important you should keep in mind is that to get hot pink, you will need to unlock the flowers in the Seaside Resort because those give you the hibiscus, and that is the only flower that has hot pink as its default color. I will get into that later in this video as well. Let's take a look at the 4 default Meadows flowers and look at what colors you can mix right away once you have their 3 default colors. And reminder, if you don't have all 3 of their default colors, make sure to open more mystery seed capsules and eventually you will be able to collect them all. First up, we've got bell buttons. Their default colors are yellow, blue, and white. And here you can make green, cream, ice, mint, lime, and pistachio. Now for dandelion, the default colors are red, yellow, and white. And you can mix orange, peach, cream, coral, warm pink, and blush. Next are penstemums, and their default color is green, sky, and white. You can mix mint, cloud, teal, and seafoam. And lastly, there are tulia, and the default colors are red, yellow, and violet. And the only 2 colors that you can mix are orange and coral. The rest you have to do cross-type breeding. But before we get into that, I want to show you all of the flower breeding layouts. These are going to be extremely important in helping you mix flowers. First, I'm going to show you some examples about how to mix colors using the same type of flower, but all of these layouts will work for any type of breeding, whether it be cross-type breeding, pattern transfers, or secondary transfers. Also, these are not the only way to organize your gardens, especially for those smaller patches where there isn't a lot of space to put huge setups. So in general, what you need to do are put 2 colors that are compatible next to each other. They need to be touching each other or touching the same space between them, and you have to leave space around them for new sprouts to spawn. So for these examples, I am using the coral tulia as my example. Since placing a red tulia side by side to an orange tulia like this produced a coral tulia for me. I could have also placed them in a diagonal setup like this, where the 2 opposite diagonal spaces would have produced a red, an orange, or a coral. And as you can see, there is a lot of room for flowers to just clone themselves, which is always a possibility of happening when you are watering and fertilizing every single day. Next, we've got a spaced setup. And like I said before, they do not need to be directly touching each other, but they need to at least be touching the same space between them. They need to share a common space to be able to breed with each other. Then we've got a spaced checkerboard, which is one of my favorites, and it's very similar to the paired setup, which can be either one of these ways, and it does have the opportunity to produce a lot of possible coral flowers, especially if you were to continue the layout on each of the sides. And now onto the famous merry-go-round. If you have been around on Discord or other social media sites about Hello Kitty Island Adventure, you have probably seen somebody mention this layout for flowers. Statistically, I think it has the highest chance of crossbreeding, since each space does have the option to produce a red, an orange, or a coral. And this layout is usually the best if you have a small amount of one flower and a large amount of another flower that you want to mix. So you are really taking advantage of the likelihood of mixing them by doing this layout. But like I said before, you can set it up however you want. They just need to be touching or touching one space that they share. And you need space for new spawns to pop in, so those will be the new colors or whatever you're trying to crossbreed. Now, you're bored of only having 4 species of flowers. Now what do? Now you start unlocking the different biome flowers. Each biome will have a new default flower. This means that when you plant the wild seeds in the different biomes, they will all have a unique flower. But there are a few limitations regarding which flowers can be planted in which biome. For example, you can't plant Hibiscus on Gemstone Mountain, and you also can't plant Thistle on the Seaside Resort or the Meadow. And you can see when you try and plant flowers around which ones are available and which ones aren't. Let's get into unlocking everything. So, for the Seaside Resort, you will need the Beach Blossoms quest, which is unlocked when Lou is permanently moved into a visitor cabin. This will get you plots in the Seaside Resort and the Hibiscus flower. The default flower for Hibiscus is hot pink. So by planting the wild seeds in the Seaside Resort, you will only be getting hot pink Hibiscus. To get all of the new colors, you will need to cross-type breed, which I will explain later in this video. And besides the Seaside Resort, so far you can also plant them in the Meadow and Mount Hothead. Gemstone Mountain. The ability to garden in Gemstone Mountain unlocks here after completing the Wild Mountain Time quest, which unlocks when Poco is permanently moved into a visitor cabin. This will get you plots on Gemstone Mountain and the Oasis, and will give you the Thistle flower. The default color for the Thistle is violet, and so far it can only be planted in Gemstone Mountain and Hothead Mountain. Mount Hothead. You can garden in Mount Hothead once you finish the Fiery Flowers quest. That unlocks when Chico is permanently moved into a visitor cabin. You will be getting the Heavy Nettle flower, which has a default color of orange, and so far it can only be planted in Mount Hothead and Gemstone Mountain. Flowers for the Spooky Swamp, Cloud Island, and Rainbow Reef are unknown as of the making of this video, which this video has been recorded right after the 1.7.5 update. So this is all pre 1.8, so any changes that happen there aren't in this video. But you know, once they do make flowers for these biomes, I will make videos for you about them. After I publish this video, and if there are like extreme changes, I will put like in the description if something is wildly out of date. So keep an eye on that just in case. Okay, now we've got all the biome flowers. Let's talk about event flowers. Event flowers are limited time flowers that randomly spawn in any biome, and they only grow during their specific events. And as of this video being made, we have only had 2 so far, but they are planning to add more in the future. Event flowers can still develop patterns and transfer patterns after the events have finished, but they cannot reproduce new spawns until the event starts again, or until we get a feature they have been hinting at for a while. Once we know what it is, I will make a video about it. So one of the most special things about event flowers is that they usually have a unique pattern, other than the default ombre. So let's talk about marigolds. The marigold was the first ever event flower we got in the game. This was during the Color Blaze Carnival event. The default color for the marigold is orange, and the default pattern is trim. Here is what a solid marigold looks like compared to the trim versions. Now let's talk about eggworts. The eggwort was the second event flower we got in the game. It was during Gudetama's month of May event. The default colors for eggworts are sky and white, and the default pattern is speckled. Here are the examples of what the solid eggworts look like, compared to the speckled eggworts. And now that I've mentioned patterned flowers, how do you get a patterned flower? You get a patterned flower by watering a solid flower and fertilizing it. Patterned flowers are particularly special for many reasons, and even crossbred flowers can become rare and patterned. Patterned flowers are absolutely necessary for transferring colors to different types of flowers. And for the majority of flowers, the default pattern is an ombre, which you can tell if it has this little symbol under the color symbol in the inventory. And when using fertilizer, there's a 1% chance of a pattern appearing. What's really intriguing is that the entire plant, not just the flower, becomes rare. So even if you pluck the rare flowers, the plant continues to produce rare ones forever. Once it becomes patterned, it will not revert back to solid. If you fertilize a seed or sprout and it becomes rare before being dug up, it maintains its pattern when turned into a seed packet by the trowel. Even though you cannot turn a patterned flower into a seed packet by using the seed dispenser, this is sort of the loophole to get patterned seed packets by digging them up before they can be a seedling. And all patterns are transferable to other types of flowers, but more on that later. Transferring colors. This is also known as cross-type breeding, since you are breeding between different types or species of flowers. If you do not have one of these colors, you need to cross-type breed for it. But once you do get all of these colors, you can continue mixing them normally with the same type of flower. How does transferring colors work? First, you will need a patterned flower in the color you want to transfer to the other type of flower. Put the patterned flower next to a different type of flower of any color. Then, leave empty spaces around to allow new flowers to sprout. And make sure to water and fertilize every day to help this process. If you look here at my examples, I've got a hot pink ombre hibiscus, and I'm trying to transfer hot pink to a bell button. I could have put any color of bell button for this, but I decided to use white. If you've done everything correctly and waited because it's all random, you should end up with a hot pink bell button. And don't worry if you keep getting duplicate white bell buttons or duplicate hot pink hibiscuses, that's totally normal. Just keep troweling up what you don't want every day and keep on fertilizing. Remember, it's all random, so it might take a day, it might take a month. In my second example, my goal is to transfer violet to a penstemum. I have a violet ombre tulia, and I've placed it near a sky penstemum. My goal is for a violet penstemum to sprout. So these are just the little formulas, and if you are worried about layouts, there is a previous section in this video with a bunch of great examples you can use for the cross-type breeding. Here is more of a visual example using the merry-go-round method, and as you can see, I have placed a yellow ombre bell button in the center, and all around it I have empty spaces. Then I have placed flowers that I want to transfer yellow to. There are many different types of flowers and colors, but I suggest if you are doing all of the same type on the outside to use the same color or colors you know can't mix, so they can focus on cross-type breeding with the flower in the center instead of mixing among themselves. So now you can see that this is the goal of what I would like to happen, but I could just get a blue penstemum sprouting or even another yellow bell button sprout. It is all random, so just keep fertilizing to bring up the likelihood. I also personally tend to trowel up a setup if I'm not seeing any results over a few days. And here's an actual setup I was using during the month of May. I was trying to transfer lime to eggworts. As you can see, the lime and white ombre hibiscus in the center of the merry-go-round, surrounded by white eggworts. And here is one more example of using a merry-go-round, but there's two different ways to get coral. This was also during the month of May with the eggworts. So on the merry-go-round in the back, you can see I'm using one for crossbreeding, which is mixing between the same type of flower, trying to mix the orange with the red to get coral. And on the front merry-go-round, I have one for cross-type breeding, which I'm trying to transfer the coral from the ombre penstemum to the solid eggworts. Transferring patterns. So transferring patterns is a lot like transferring colors between different types of flowers, since transferring a pattern will only occur with different types of flowers. So in this photo, I have an example of 3 of them that I have transferred a pattern from a different type to. I've got a Marigold with an ombre pattern, a Hibiscus with a speckled pattern, and a heavy nettle with the trim pattern. So the possibilities are endless. So all you need to do this is you need to place a patterned flower of one color next to a different type of flower with the same primary color. Then leave empty spaces around to allow for new flowers to sprout. Then water and fertilize every day to help the process. In these examples I put down here, there is a lilac speckled eggwort next to a lilac solid tulia, all for the chance to get a lilac speckled tulia. Then there is an orange trim marigold next to an orange solid heavy nettle. And then there's the chance to get an orange trim heavy nettle. When you are trying to transfer patterns, there is a 1% to 2% chance of successfully transferring a pattern, so it is quite low, so be patient and keep trying. So let's look at some more examples in action. Here is a merry-go-round to transfer a speckled pattern from an eggwort to another type of flower. As you can see, they are all the same color, sky. And here is what one of these looks like in game, the patterned flower in the middle with all of the solid ones on the outside. And ideally, you would eventually get a pattern transfer to happen in the middle spaces. So possibly a speckled penstemon or a speckled hibiscus, or anything you put around it. And then here is another merry-go-round example for transferring a trim pattern. And the heavy nettle, I was able to transfer the trim pattern too. The key here, remember, is just using all of the same colored flower to transfer patterns between types. Now that we understand crossbreeding, cross-type breeding, and pattern transfers, let's talk about secondary transfers. These are often called double ombrés by a lot of people in the community, but in my mind, this is all I see when I hear double ombre. It has been confirmed that the developers use the term secondary transfers and sometimes hybrids. But they said internally, with some changes that are happening, secondary transfers are becoming more relevant. I don't really know what that means yet, but let's wait and see. Since remember, I'm filming this video before 1.8, just right after the 1.7.5 update. So back to secondary transfers. These are essentially patterned flowers, but with 2 unique colors. Think of these as the rarest type of flowers you can make so far. First, let me give you a little bit more information to help you just understand how these work, which hopefully will make it super easy for you to make yourself. On the left, there are 2 default patterned tulias. There is an orange and white ombre tulia and a red and white ombre tulia. Then on the right image, I've got a secondary transfer, since it is a red and orange ombre tulia. This is important to talk about because all patterned flowers have a default secondary color. The primary color is the one that tends to be on the bottom of the flower, and if the flower has a color, the default secondary color is always going to be white. But if the flower's primary color is white, the default secondary color is always warm pink. So you can see, I have a bunch of these white patterned flowers. They all have the default secondary color of warm pink. It works for any type of flower, any type of pattern. They all follow this rule for the default secondary colors. Then all other colors of patterned flowers, they get the default secondary color of white. These rules apply to ombre, speckled, trim, everything. So the way that secondary transfers work is when a patterned flower inherits a second color from another patterned flower of the same type and same pattern instead of keeping their default secondary color. So that is how I was able to get the red and orange ombre tulia through placing a red and white ombre tulia next to an orange and white ombre tulia. Then the red and white one inherited the orange from the orange and white one, making the red and orange ombre. I think it could have gone the other way. It could have become an orange and red, but it just happened to be red and orange. So red being the primary and orange becoming the secondary transfer. So the basic formula for making these are putting 2 patterned flowers of the same type and the same pattern next to each other. Then you've got to fertilize and water them every single day to up your chances of getting a secondary transfer. And of course, you can use any layout you want. If you need ideas, I've got them earlier in this video. I have found out that if you have a lot of patterned flowers of different colors, putting them into a checkerboard layout or even a spaced checkerboard will give you the most opportunities to get some type of a secondary transfer. So there you have it, folks. Flowers in Hello Kitty Island Adventure aren't just pretty decorations. They're a canvas for creativity and discovery. And besides the basic formulas for getting new colors, you can garden how much or how little you want to. It's all up to you. I really hope this was at least a little bit helpful for all of you. Let me know if you've got any more questions, and if this was helpful, please consider subscribing and tuning into one of my live streams. I put months of work into this video, and I'm actually really proud of how it all turned out. So stay tuned for more gardening tips and tricks. Until next time, happy planting!